Hello crafty friends, welcome to today's card making video. In today's video I'm going to use these dies. I picked them up at a crafty charity shop for about £3 I think, and I thought I would play with them and share some ideas in case you have similar dies in your stash. So for card number 1 I decided to do a bit of smushing. I took a panel of linen textured cardstock and smushed on some salvage patina using my smusher. If you want to know how to make a smusher, there is a video linked in this video's description. Once I had my first layer down, I dried it with my hairdryer and then smushed on some more to get a nice layered effect. I then picked up the remaining ink with a wet paintbrush and spattered that on for a bit of extra energy. I wanted to bring in a second colour, so I chose a purple. This is Wilted Violet, and I smushed that on top of the salvage patina. It wasn't salvage patina, it was Uncharted Mariner, I think. I didn't add all that much, I just wanted a subtle hint of purple amongst the blue. Once that was all nice and dry, I taped on the outline of the Congrats sentiment die. I got it nice and straight with my T-square ruler and ran it through my die cutting machine, and that left me with a nice aperture. I wanted to add a bit of bling to this card and a bit of stamping and heat embossing, so I found a grungy grid stamp and stamped in embossing ink around the aperture. I then sprinkled on some gold embossing powder and melted it with my heat tool. I then die cut the actual word, the Congrats, from some white cardstock, pressed it into my embossing ink pad to make it sticky, and then put it in my gold embossing powder to cover it in the powder. I then heated it with my heat tool. I actually did that process 3 times in total to get a really nice thick dimensional heat embossed gold sentiment. All you have to do when you do multiple embossings is make sure that the previous layer has cooled and set before you try adding any more ink. So what I wanted to do with this card was put that gold sentiment on the inside of the card. So I needed to die cut a hole in my card blank in exactly the right position so it would line up with the hole in the panel. So I put the panel on the card, put the die cut in the hole, removed the panel holding the die cut in place, and then I put the die around the die cut and stuck that down with a bit of tape and ran the whole card blank through my die cutting machine, making sure the card blank was open so I didn't cut through the back as well. And that worked. I got the hole in the front of the card blank in exactly the right position so it matched up with a hole in the panel. I then stuck my panel on my card and dipped my Congrats into some high-tack glue, stuck that on my card, lining it up in the aperture that I made. And that Congrats is now stuck on the inside of the card. So when it's stood up, you've got an aperture, but you can see through to the Congrats. And when you open the card, the Congrats is in there. I did use a damp baby wipe to wipe off any excess glue. And then I used some gold Nouveau drops to add a bit of extra energy, some dimension, some gloss, some glitter. I used Gold Coast glitter drops and pale gold metallic drops. So this isn't clean and simple by any stretch of the imagination. I really like it. It's got energy, it's got movement, it's got colour, it's got metallics. Everything I love about a card, just no white space. Right, on to number 2. This time I did a portrait rather than a landscape card, and I die cut a hole in the front of my panel. And again, I used the outline die, this time for the word love, to cut a hole in the front of my card blank, but I didn't use a panel this time. I just smushed straight on to my card blank, holding it still so that I didn't accidentally smear the inside around. That didn't work brilliantly, but I'll come up with a plan for that later. I used the same 2 colours, but instead of having an aperture with the die cut word on the inside of the card, I added a bit of vellum to the back of my aperture on the inside of the front of the card. I just use high-tack glue to stick that down. And instead of heat embossing my word, I die cut it from gold cardstock, but before I die cut it, I put some double-sided sticky adhesive on the back. I then took the release paper off and popped it in the aperture on the vellum, so the love is actually on the front of the card this time. But you do have a bit of a window with a frosty vellum backing. Obviously, the inside of the card looks a bit mucky, so I cut a piece of card using the love aperture. I flipped it over because the bit that's going to be visible is the reverse of the word, if you see what I mean. I went around the inside of the aperture with my edge beveling tool to make it look like it had been cut that way round. And then I used some glue to stick it on the reverse of the front of the card, lining up the aperture with the hole in the card. I then trimmed down all the overhang, and this actually worked really well. I didn't have to do any measuring. All I had to do was line things up and chop them with my guillotine. And I got a lovely clean inside of my card where the ink and the vellum were hidden behind that piece of pristine white card. And that was card number 2 finished. I really like the way this one turned out. I like having that love gold die cut hovering almost in the aperture, being held in place by that translucent vellum. So on card number 3, I decided to cut my enjoy outline bang in the middle. But before I cut it, I put some double-sided sticky adhesive on the inside of the card to cover the area where the die was going to be. I then ran that through my die cutting machine, and you'll see why I did the double-sided sticky in a minute. I then took my Distress Oxides and smooshed them on again, this time in a diagonal from the bottom left to the top right. I heat embossed the grid using gold embossing powder again. This time I did a cross shape just for something different. Then I opened up the card, removed the release paper from the double-sided adhesive and added a bit of acetate. I then die cut the word enjoy from gold card again with some double-sided sticky on the back and popped that on the acetate. And to make the reverse of the front of the card nice and neat and tidy and clean, I did exactly the same thing as I did with the previous card. So we're on to card number 4 now. I took a panel of cardstock. I die cut the outline for the word great, smooshed on my ink, heat embossed my stamped grid, and then once that was all dry and set and cooled, I put some double-sided tape around the back of the aperture. I could have done the double-sided sticky again if I wanted to, but I thought I'd just show you another technique. I stuck some acetate on and then I put some craft foam all over the back of the panel because I wanted to create a shaker. I used some gold foil cardstock circles that I'd previously cut when I was doing another project, put them in the shaker well, put a bit of card over the back to complete the back, and then added tape runner and stuck my shaker panel down. I then die cut the word great from some gold pearlized cardstock that I'd stuck double-sided sticky on the back of. And then I popped that on the acetate. So now I've got a little shaker card as well. And I added Nuvo drops to all of my cards like I did with the first one. And there you go. I've made a card with each of the dies in that die set that I picked up at the charity shop. I hope you've enjoyed the video and that it's given you a few ideas of things you can do with similar dies in your stash. If it has, let me know in the comments, like, subscribe, ring the notification bell, and I'll see you back here very soon for another video. Thanks for watching. Bye for now.